Got my first tattoo in Coney Island. I wanted a skull and crossbones like the pirate flag, you know. Oh, and the guy showed me a stencil, a skull and crossbones. Oh, skull and crossbones. I was the pirate that I wanted to be. It was a kid's dream. It was my dream. I was living there.
I've always classified tattooing as about the world's dumbest hobby. It's a goddamn ordeal getting tattooed over. You got to sit down after you paid for it and take it. So if you see somebody with a tattoo, it's a given. He sat there and took it. So he's joined a, well, it used to be an elite club.
Coolest thing about tattooing was I had found my way into a real strange group of people. It was very, very special. You know, I came out of a 60s culture, you know, so to get away from that and meet all these really unusual guys, I really felt like something real special was happening to me, you know. I guess I knew that tattooing was going to get real popular, and of course it went like wildfire. And all the young ones talk the same way. Oh, I'm real dedicated. This is my life's work and all that. Right? Kids in black T-shirts, you know. I mean, I wouldn't trade one Jerry for 1,000 of these black T-shirt kids.
Oh, they sent for the Navy to come to Tulagi. The gallant Navy agreed. With 1,000 sections in different directions. My God, what a fucked up stampede. Fuck 'em all, fuck 'em all. The long and the short and the tall. Fuck all the admirals who give us the flack. They don't give a shit if we ever come back. We're saying goodbye to them all. As back to our rust pots we crawl. There'll be no promotion this side of the ocean. So cheer up, my lads, fuck 'em all.
If you really want a true classic tattoo, you'll have to go back in time and cross the Pacific. When your tramp steamer hits the port of Honolulu, hop off and head straight to Chinatown. Soon you'll hit Hotel Street. You'll know this by the sudden progression of red poppin' hookers, boozed up sailors, and general sanctioned mayhem. That's where you'd find a man with a white t-shirt, an oily gray pompadour, and ink-splattered Frisco jeans, known to all as Norman Keith, Sailor Jerry Collins. He's the man many see as the master of the deftly crafted, boldly lined, balls-forward old-school tattoo, the kind fueled by the devil-may-care appetites of men far away from home. He's the man who took these classic designs, known as Flash, and incorporated the Asiatic styles born from his years of travel on the high seas. To a generation of tattooers, he's simply just the man. Old Ironsides, Hoary Smoku, Sailor Jerry.
Sometimes I wonder, how did I ever get mixed up in all this shit in the first place?
I think Jerry's one of the most important tattooers of the 20th century.
I mean, the thing about what Sailor Jerry did was he was a pure, down-to-earth tattoo artist. I mean, he took American designs and elaborated on them, made them his own. The standard that you got to be up with nowadays.
They called him a master of tattooing, and it was true.
Yeah, it was like taking acid. It was like, Jesus, this is what tattoos can look like. They were so far beyond in their complexity, in the sophistication, the layout, the colors, the whole thing. You know, it was just way beyond anything anybody had done in tattooing. And it was blowing minds of people all over the world.
I was always just a step behind him because he lived in the same era I lived in. He actually lived in the era before I lived in. And his later eras was my beginning eras, and too many errors, they put you on second base. Second base is all right. If you're Jackie Robinson, steal third. What the fuck's the difference?
That fucking Sailor
That
Jerry.
fucking Sailor Jerry, Jesus Christ.
Sailor Jerry was born on the edge of the American frontier at the turn of the 20th century.
He was born in 1911. He's from Northern California. He was raised in the Sierra foothills.
He was from up around Ukiah, I think.
Was a real hellraiser and interesting guy from an early life, according to his account.
Adventure came quick to the wild-eyed Jerry. By his early teens, he was off to see the world.
He traveled around the country, as a lot of young guys did, kind of bumming around on boxcars. It was a sort of adventure. It was like pre-Beatnik, pre-Jack Kerouac on the road stuff. Yeah, that's where he started tattooing. He claimed he was tattooing by hand with, you know, handheld needles and whatever he could get for ink. And then he hit the Great Lakes area and ran into Tats Thomas, who was a famous Chicago tattooer and real character in his own right.
Tats knew a guy that worked in the morgue. Jerry was an apprentice, a green kid wanting to learn to tattoo. And they told him, well, the way you'll learn to tattoo is we tattoo stiffs at first. And they took Jerry down, got him in the morgue to tattoo a stiff. Well, the guy he tattooed was not really dead. When Jerry started to tattoo him, the guy started howling and scared the shit out of Jerry. It was a big joke, you know. Yeah.
Tats was sort of the one that started Jerry off with machines. And he remained in touch with Tats forever.
And Jerry learned to tattoo in the Chicago area.
All the old tattooers that were on State Street, when that was a honky-tonk area with arcades and that, tattooing in Chicago was controlled by the mob, and that's the way it worked.
Fuck Chicago. A nightmare. I worked for the tail end of the syndicate from Al Capone. Holy Christ, nightmare.
Jerry came out of the real straight-up American tattoo tradition that was formalized really probably in like around World War I. All American decorative tattooing really sprang from the Japanese example in the late 19th century, when Europeans and Americans, people wealthy enough with enough connections, could go to Japan right after the country was open to the West, after this hundreds of years of seclusion. So Westerners started getting these small souvenir tattoos from Japanese tattoo artists. And it was actually a real high society thing. It was expensive. They brought in some Japanese tattoo masters to New York, to London, to work on people, because it was a real exclusive deal. By World War I, it became a thing with like armed forces. There were tattoo parlors around in the West. This is what Jerry really drew from. It became a real working class thing, and then it particularly became a thing that people in the armed forces were getting, especially sailors. A lot of it was in towns where there were military. It tended to be in port cities. It tended to be in big cities in the U.S., near bases, just as an economic thing, because young military guys were likely to get tattoos. That's where the tattoo shops would open. It was like sailor towns, somewhat in army bases, but for some reason the sailors and the Marines seemed to be the best customers. If you're in a situation where everybody has to be exactly the same, you live in exactly the same quarters, you dress exactly the same, it's a process of identity, it's individuation. Like, I'm gonna say who I am via this tattoo. I really think tattoos are amulets. It's things that they like, things that they want to take onto themselves and gain those characteristics. Tattoos, besides being amuletic in some sense, whether it's conscious or not with people, I think what hooked me when I was a kid, you go in the tattoo shop and the classic stuff was a little distillation of everything dramatic about life. And it had, you know, sadness, and it had sex and death and longing and friendship and patriotism and resignation and, you know, this humor, and it was amazing.
And guys would return with tattoos, and they were like heroes. So to me, tattoos, and they still represent romance, travel, adventure. They're really, to me, they're travel marks.
The spirit of adventure is unquenched.
A lot of times the tattoo shops were not freestanding businesses. They were in penny arcades. And of course, the carnies, tattooing was always associated with amusement parks. In the days before theme parks, it was either carnivals, which are itinerant, traveling around, or places like Coney Island or the Pike in Long Beach, which goes back to the late 19th century. And they would have these tattoo parlors there. Tattooers would drift around, and a lot of these places would amass tons of flash and machines. I don't know, it was just a whole different thing. It was a honky-tonk world. It was definitely a subculture. It was not a hipster thing. It was scary. People were like, oh, tattoos. It still had that, you know, like dark side of life thing, which is part of the fun of it.